All right, welcome back from that short break. We continue from here. So talking about the rules of a trend, we'll spend the next 30 minutes doing justice to those. So I will have, so we have here trend rules. Yeah, a rule of a trend. So I will start with an uptrend. So we know that in an uptrend we have formats in this form. Okay, we know that up and up, up, up and up. Okay, so since we understand that for an uptrend to exist, for an uptrend to be called an uptrend or be referred to an uptrend, it must create patterns that directs high, okay, other than below. It must be moving above or moving upward. So having known that for an uptrend, you're expecting a trend that is moving upward, 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 upward. Therefore, we call this pattern, we call this exact pattern for an uptrend, we call it a higher high and a higher low. A higher high and a higher low. A higher high, higher low. Higher high, higher low. So one thing you want to understand, one thing you want to know is when you come on your chart, you want to know if it is on an uptrend or a downtrend. If it's on an uptrend, you want to make sure that there is these patterns, higher highs, higher low, higher high, higher low. Then for you to first decide that this is an uptrend. If you're having something not in this format, probably you're having something like this, higher high, higher lows, higher highs, higher lows, all of this, thing like this, this is a crazy chart. Okay, so if you have something like this, you want to agree with me that it is a confused chart. It is a confused trend. It is neither up nor down. For an uptrend to establish or to exist, it must have records areas or patterns as higher highs, higher lows, higher highs, higher lows, higher highs, higher lows. That is one. If it is recording these patterns, then we are now for sure, or we now know for sure that it is an uptrend. Now, this is to identify an uptrend. You know that to identify an uptrend, I repeat, to identify an uptrend, you're looking at for a higher highs, higher lows, higher highs, higher lows, higher highs, higher lows to identify an uptrend. Now, to sustain an uptrend, to know if an uptrend is being sustained, it must record zones like in this format. That is, remember that from the establishing patterns, you recorded areas around the higher highs and the higher lows, the higher highs and the higher lows, the higher highs and the higher lows for the zones recorded. To sustain an uptrend, that is, to know if this trend is still on an uptrend, or if it is going to continue to be recording at higher highs and higher lows, then the previous low or the current low must not be lower than the previous. I will explain this in a bit of way. Let me use this. This is a high, this is a low. This is another high. This is another low. Okay, this is another high. This is another low. This is another high. This is another low. This is another high. And this is another low. Okay. Let me do it again. So I want to do it strategically now. Following some. Okay, let's start from here. So this is a high. This is a low. This is another high. There's a low. This is another high. This is a low. This is another high. This is a low. This is another high. This is the low. This is another high. This is the low. This is another high. And this is the low. So you know for sure that is an uptrend because one, the current high, let me explain this again. It started here, a high, a low, a high, a low. So this now is the current low. The current low. This is the current low. All right. So because this is the current low, the other previous low is the previous. And for an uptrend to remain an uptrend, the current low, the current low must not be lower than the previous. So let's say you measure this chart like this. Okay, let's say this is the current low, and then this is another high. This low becomes the previous now, and whatever low that is coming up from here becomes the previous. I don't know if you get this. Let me say this again. This used to be the current low. All right, until that shoot. Therefore, this is now the previous low. So if anything should happen here and price drops, this current low should not be lower than the previous. Let me use a line to illustrate what I mean. Let me use a line. So here, let's say here is the previous, the low, okay? When price was here, when price was at this zone for the low, it was a current low. And the rule states as a current low in an uptrend, it must not be lower than the previous. For a current low in an uptrend, must not be lower than the previous low. So when this was the current low, it went up high. Okay, and then this became the current low. The rule remains for an uptrend to continue being an uptrend or holding its uptrend, the current low must not be lower than the previous. You see that stepping rule. Okay, so if this is the current low, must not be lower than the previous. If this is the current low, must not be lower than the previous. If this is the current low, must not be lower than the previous. So that's why we have stuff like this. All right. All right. Okay. So let's say, for instance, you are trading the financial market, and this is the pattern on your chart. And you met the zone, you met price you met price at this point. You met price at this point, probably okay, dropping to this point. And you met price here. The simple rule for an uptrend simply states you should take for a buy because you don't expect price to drop below the low, except for a various reason which we'll mention on reversal. So what happens more on this rule states that you should reverse the trend. You should trade reversal on that trend. So that is simple rule for an uptrend. I've mentioned how to identify an uptrend, the techniques of identifying an uptrend. For you to identify an uptrend, we want to make sure that you are strategically looking at the different formats of that trend. This is an illustration. It could be a different ball game in the live market, in the real chart. So in this real chart, look at what is displaying here. From here, price trending up here. The green candles are bullish. That means a price that is going up, bullish price that is going up. So it dropped at this zone, a white candle, bearish price that is dropping. All right, so it's recorded is low here and went up. You see this low is not below this low. It recorded another low here and went up. Recorded another low here and went up. Recorded another low, went up, and then it broke. It broke the head. We know why. We'll learn about what can cause a break in a trend. There are a lot of things that can cause a break in the trend. But let's understand a trend first before we can go over learning about things that can cause a break in a trend. It is very important we do. So we know that for an uptrend to remain an uptrend, it has to record areas in the market, a higher high and a higher low is very important. Higher highs and higher lows, very important for the market. And you also know that for an uptrend to continue to exist, it must record series that the current low must not be lower than the previous. Must record areas that the current low must not be lower than the previous. The current low must not be lower than the previous. All right. Firstly, you want to identify the trend by observing a higher highs and a higher lows, higher highs, higher lows, higher highs, higher lows, higher highs, higher lows. Then you can say that this is an uptrend. And for that trend to continue to swing up and down, the current low must not be lower than the previous. The current low must not be lower than the previous, and the previous must be lower than the previous, and the previous, the previous, and the previous, the previous, and the previous, the previous. I believe this simple rule is good enough to help you understand trend. What we teach you here is to broaden your knowledge. You still have works to do by going and I practicing the chart. You have to go back on your chart, look at it, look at it, look at it, and look at it. Let's go to the downtrend. The rule I stated on the uptrend is applicable to the downtrend, but in a different way. It's just the opposite. So if a trend is on the up, if we know that uptrend is a trend that is going up, then a downtrend is simply a trend that is coming down. All right, this is what I mean. For a trend that is going up, for the down, I have to change this color to bullish pattern. Okay, so for a downtrend, we know there's a trend that is coming down, and let's say we have this is the high and then this is low, high, low, high, sorry, low, high, lower, high, lower, and high. So similar thing for the uptrend also happens with the downtrend. A downtrend we know is an obvious market transition coming downward or moving downward. In an uptrend, we had series of higher highs and higher lows. Series of higher highs and higher lows. Higher highs and higher lows. Since we had those series of higher highs, higher lows, higher highs, higher lows, for a downtrend, we have series of lower lows, lower highs, lower lows, lower highs, lower lows, lower highs, lower lows, lower highs, and lower lows, lower highs, and it continues on and on. For a downtrend to be identified, for you to identify a downtrend, you must make sure that that trend is recording a lower low and a lower high, a lower low and a lower high, a lower low and a lower high. That's to establish a trend, to know that this is on a downtrend. Now, to understand that a trend is going to continue or persist, the same rule I mentioned for the uptrend also is applicable for the downtrend. Since we have a lower low, lower high, lower low, lower high, you must know for sure that the current high for the downtrend must not be higher than the previous high. The current high for the downtrend must not be higher than the previous high. The current high for the downtrend must not be higher than the previous. If there is anything that happens in that regard, then we tag that as a chaos, and we have to understand technical ways of switching around it. That'll be our next conversation on this training. In our next section, we'll be looking at how to identify a switch in a trend, in any trend, up or down. All right, we'll understand how to understand a switch or a break of a trend. That will be on our next section. So for the simple rules, for the two simple rules I mentioned, for the downtrend or the uptrend, it is a very comprehensive and a universal acceptable rule of trading you should hold dear to. Should hold it strongly, don't let it fade away, because it will determine how you see the trend, and the trend is what you need to prosper. The trend is part of what you need to prosper in this system, all right? But it is not enough until you master it properly. I would need you to go over these concepts, this trading video, over and over again. Go over every other trading videos, go over them over and over. Come to your chart, look at it over and over, except you don't want a life from this. If you need a life from this, you must be willing to put in the work. You must be willing to put in the work. There is no shortcut. There is no shortcut. You must learn what you need to learn, know what you need to know, practice what you need to practice, and fail in areas you need to fail, and finally succeed. The succeeding part of it is the most interesting for me, and that is what I want to watch you get to. I want to watch you get there. All right, you all that'll be all for now. I'll see you all on the next trading section. Have a wonderful morning. Eat well and stay safe. Bye for now.